Hello, welcome to Career Insight. My name's Matt Hanley.
And I'm Hillary Roman.
And today we have a special guest from South Dakota First, Cassandra Barancott.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. So, Cassandra, what we actually do first is we do some dad joke trivia questions.
We hope you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, so why did the Scarecrow win an award?
For like best fright?
Well, the category's not important, Hillary.
Oh, best. Well,
I have no guesses, Matt.
Okay. He was outstanding in his field.
oh my gosh. Okay, that was pretty solid. Okay, I got one. You guys ready? Where do pirates get their hooks?
That's a thinker.
It's going to be super obvious when you tell us, right?
Oh, totally.
Captain Hook R Us.
It's pretty close. Any other ideas? The second-hand store.
Oh.
Good one.
Okay.
All right, Matt, you got another one?
Yes. What does garlic do when it gets hot?
Adds flavor.
Well, yeah, that's true, but that's not a joke. It takes its cloves off.
Oh my God, that's a little too racy for this podcast.
Is it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was a good one. Okay, I got one more. How do flat earthers travel?
Well,
Should we get real engineering nerdy?
Yeah,
In
totally.
a 2D plane. Am I close?
Yep, it's on a plane.
Yes.
Yay!
Good
Rad.
job.
That's fantastic.
okay, here's another one that might be right up your alley, Cassandra.
Yep. I'm ready.
Where do math teachers go on vacation?
Oh, man.
They take vacations?
I don't.
Oh. Times Square.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, Times Squared. Okay, that's solid.
Okay, so Cassandra, would you tell us a little bit about SD First?
Sure. So SD First is a program that is supported by the National Science Foundation, and it started with a cohort in fall of 2021. And the purpose of the program is to support first-generation students on the School Mines campus through their engineering and science degrees by providing academic, social, and financial support in sort of those three categories, and help students build a network so that they can really succeed and do well through their programs that they're studying with.
Okay, and how many students are part of SD First?
We currently have 25. There are 15 sophomores, and they started as freshmen in fall of 2021. And we have 10 more freshmen that started the past fall in fall 2022. And we're looking to have about 10 more next fall that we'll incorporate too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And I think it's really important today that it's first generation.
Yeah, today is the National First Generation Celebration Day. So this is kind of a good timing for this podcast. So there are groups all over the country that are celebrating today and celebrating what it means to be first-generation student and successes of first-generation students.
Awesome. Very cool.
And so why is something like this important? Why do first-generation students need SD First?
So first-generation students are defined in a number of different ways, but for the Department of Education, the definition that we're going with is that neither parent has a bachelor's degree, has completed a bachelor's degree. And so what that means is typically first-generation students come from homes that don't have the college know-how. And a lot of things in the college process, from applying to entering to succeeding, are very nuancy, and it's hard to navigate sometimes. And if you just don't have that background knowledge, and there's no one to lean on at home that could help you with that background knowledge, that process can be very difficult and a little bit overwhelming sometimes. And so that's really what this program strives to do, is to help students and their families navigate the campus culture from entry to success at the end of their degree, where to find help, what what does office hours mean? Sometimes first generation students don't even know the lingo.
Right.
And so we're sort of helping to provide that support, as well as create a network, a safe space for students to feel welcome with their peers that are also first generation students. Provide mentoring with our program coordinator, Alicia Jensen. And then, of course, the financial aspect, too, in helping them financially with scholarships so that they can possibly work less during the school year and focus on their studies.
Awesome. I didn't know that it also had a component of like involving the families. I think that's really great because I imagine as a parent, you know, it'd be great if you knew some things along the way too, because you would love to be a point of contact for your student, your son or daughter, and just be involved in kind of that process. So.
Yeah, from the get-go, if anybody's ever filled out a FAFSA, they are not easier to do. And if you've never seen one before, it can be, like I said, really overwhelming.
Right.
And so helping families with that process and connecting them with the right people in financial aid. And then, you know, even down to student success. We've had a lot of conversations with parents on what do we do if my son or daughter doesn't pass this class, or what are the next steps?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we have any idea of previous, so this is a pretty new program, you said 2021, right?
Correct.
Yep. What the retention, persistence, or graduation rates looked like for first-gen students pre-SD First?
Pre-SD First, we haven't been collecting data for that long, so, but we do have a number of years before SD First was in existence. So first of all, I'll say the statistics on campus, about a third of our campus population, of our incoming freshman class, I should say, is first generation. So it's a huge percentage of our campus population. And retention is about half what it is for the rest of the campus population. So that means graduation, 5-year graduation rate. We have about 49% on our campus. That was before SD First, so a number of years ago. And first generation students had about a 24, 25% 5-year graduation rate.
Wow.
So it's a pretty significant gap. And these students aren't falling out because they're not academically prepared or they're not willing to put in the hard work. It really is a lot of times just that they can't navigate that culture, and maybe they have to work a little more, and their academics become second, and they don't know who to turn to for help.
Right.
And that's pretty significant. So actually, I didn't realize that a third of our campus was first generation students.
Yeah.
Do you know how that compares to the national average?
It's a little bit higher than the national average. National average is about 25% of college-going students are first-generation students. It's more than you think.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Yeah.
I think that's incredible. I'm wondering why do we attract so many first-generation students? Again, thinking even pre-SD First, I think SD First. Actually, I guess that's my second question. Has SD First attracted more first-generation students?
I don't know that we've attracted more first-generation students. Maybe it's just that it's brought more light to first generation as a topic. A lot of students don't even know that they're first generation. So I'll give you an example. I was a first-generation student, and I didn't even know what that meant until I was out of college. And so I didn't know that this was, something that I should maybe be on the lookout for and asking for extra help. I think the number on our campus really has to do with our geographic location. And so the more rural an area tends to be, the higher percentage you probably will have for first generation students.
I guess that makes a lot of sense being in the Midwest. You think of farmers and ranchers, that's what they've done for generations. And maybe just transitioning to college now. Yeah,
and if the next generation doesn't want to pick that up and they're headed to college, then it makes sense that they're first generation. Right. Yeah.
And Hillary, you're first generation too.
I am a first gen. So when you were talking about not even knowing you were first gen, it was very that spoke to me too, because I didn't know what that was. I remember filling out the FAFSA like you were saying, and it asked if I wanted to do a work study, and I didn't even know what that meant. And looking back, I would have totally done it. I just thought that the money that you got from work study went to your tuition, not in your pocket.
Sure.
And I had to I remember I worked 3 jobs when I was in my undergrad, so it was really hard to be successful because I also had to pay the bills, and I didn't have any financial assistance from my parents. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, I think first gens sort of tend to a lot of times fall through, and maybe by happy accident things work out a lot of times.
Sure.
That was my case. I didn't know I was first gen, and I had some very great mentors on through my college career, and I was lucky in that respect. But if you don't get hooked up with a really great mentor, or things don't happen to work out, you don't want to leave that to chance.
Right.
And some of those things that you talked about are very complicated processes. I've been on this campus 10 years as a faculty member, and I'm not sure I still understand work study. It's just, it's a very gray box to me, and so it's hard to ask students to understand it too.
Maybe we need to get Monica in on this podcast.
Yeah, that's a good
financially
idea.
and talk
Great.
about it.
I think we'd still be confused.
Yeah.
It's confusing. And Hillary, I've heard you, it's funny, Cassandra, you mentioned a few times you were, so first gen, you didn't know you were first gen. I've heard you use that same phrase
I
before.
totally
more than
do.
once. I was so first gen, I didn't know. And I can't remember what they were, but that, I don't know, schools had libraries, take your pick.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I don't even know if it's just, I don't even know how it became a phrase, but I feel like it's very much a phrase throughout the first gen, population.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, very much so.
yeah.
Yeah.
And now I work in higher education, so it's very full circle. I obviously hopefully know a little bit more than I did when I started my undergrad, but here's the thing, everybody starts from a square one that they don't know what they don't know, right? So
Yep.
I think having this program on campus is amazing, especially if we have more than the national average for first gen students. We need to be able to support them in the ways in which they need.
Right. Yep. And I think that difference in the 5-year graduation rate is very telling on that we need to do a better job of supporting these students on our campus.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's 25% graduation. I mean, there's something wrong there.
That's too low.
Yeah. So I'm curious, is this what you're doing with SD First? Is this unique to us? Are there other universities doing this? Have other places found a successful model for support services for first gen students?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, so this program is specific to School of Mines, but there are a lot of other support systems for first generation students around the country. They look different no matter what school you're at, and the support services might vary a little bit. But there is a big push nationwide to support first generation students. We need a bigger workforce and a bigger educated workforce. That's just it. And so if this is a certain population of students that we can really help to kind of fill that void, then I think everybody sees the benefit in helping that way, as well as helping these students maybe pursue something that they wouldn't have thought of otherwise. So this particular program, while it takes some things from other campuses, is modeled a lot after 2 other programs on our campus. The first, and they were both funded by NSF, or all 3, I should say, funded by NSF. The first on our campus was the Teoshpe program that Dr. Kirk is running. The next was Culture and Attitude.
Sure.
And that supported women on our specifically women on our campus. And so kind of taking the successes from those 2 programs is how we built SD First, and saying this is what worked for those 2 things, this is what didn't work. And so I think you do have to tailor it a little bit to your specific campus and thinking about what our population of students needs.
And kind of going down that same vein, I mean, you work with these students day in and day out. What are some of the common struggles that they face or that you notice among those first-gen students?
Yeah. Common struggles are sort of just mechanics of, especially that first year, right? The first year of college is an interesting beast. And students are trying to figure out where to go for help and when to go for help. And so things like tutoring. Right? You might not even know that tutoring exists.
Right.
I'll give the example of our first cohort that we brought in the fall of 2021. We had a list of meetings that we wanted them to have throughout the semester and a list of requirements. And halfway through the year, at the end of the first semester, they said to us, "We want you to require us to go to tutoring." And I thought
that was the feedback from the students.
That was from the students.
Wow.
I like
thought
that.
was really interesting.
Right.
And so we implemented a required tutoring component, and they're already paying for tutoring through their tuition.
Right.
It is a free service. And some of it is just the accountability. right? We want you to hold us accountable and make sure that we do go. And so now there's a 2-hour per week tutoring requirement.
Wow.
And that helped significantly with the academic piece.
Yeah, that was my next question is, have you seen an uptick in just academics or study skills or things like that they're incorporating?
Yes, I would say yes. Yeah. They learned a lot after that first year, most definitely. And first generation students have the same struggles that all other students do, right? It's calculus and chemistry and some of those
I remember
base
those
courses that everybody struggles with. But really finding out what your resources are, not being too timid to go to the professor to ask for help, and knowing where tutoring is, right? Where is it physically located? So we had a pizza party one night last year, and then walked everybody through where the tutoring center was, just so they could physically see where it was. And so some of those things that a lot of us wouldn't think about are important, and just taking away the stigma of tutoring is not a bad place. That's where you go to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. I do appreciate that physical component, because sometimes when I remember actually thinking of my own experience, I remember somebody would be like, oh, it's in O'Hara. And I'm like, what building is that? Like, okay. And then I didn't want to ask more because I felt dumb. So I think walking them through, okay, this is where this service is located. So they've been there before, and they can be like, oh, yeah, I remember this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so it's start 2021, obviously 2 year to see graduation rates. Have you seen an increase in students from who started to this year for SD First?
So campus-wide, first-generation retention for first to second year is up. Okay. And so that's great news. I think it highlights that maybe we did bring some awareness to this a little bit. It's the first time it has gone up in as long as it's been tracked. And so that's great news. We have a lot of work to do, I'll say that. And so we have to keep getting the word out there and keep asking students to use their resources and lean on faculty and staff for support, as they should.
I think you're being too modest if this is the first year retention has gone up for first generation students and you start SD First. It's obviously not saying that's the only reason,
but we'll take it.
Yeah,
it was
no
a small
kidding.
one, but we'll take it one at a time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so where does SD First go from here? So you got the grant. How long is the grant for?
The grant is a 5-year grant, so it'll end in 2026. It will support the first cohort, the one that we just initiated, or I don't want to say initiated, brought onto campus, and then one more cohort is our plan. And so we're looking for follow-on support for this program, whether it be from the National Science Foundation or another foundation, or even donors through CARA. So we're working closely with CARA to try to find some support there too. But we'd really love to continue this program into the future. I think it's important.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
With your cohorts, have you, and now that we're in the second year of it, what are some differences or some changes you've seen from those first year students to sophomore, and then the first year for your second cohort?
Yeah, I think in our selection process for the program, we actually took some notes from the first cohort and applied that to how we selected students for the second cohort. So things like, we really wanted the students to have this big leadership component, even coming out of high school. So this is the scholarship piece of this is an application process where they have to write us a letter and get a letter of recommendation.
Oh, okay.
And then it's a selection process. And so I will tell you, in the last 2 years, we've had 104 applicants.
Wow.
And we've selected only 25 of them, right? We have 25 in the program. So it's a pretty highly selective program. And so selecting students in terms of who's going to really reap benefits from a program like this, who has that, can kind of show us that leadership capability right away and has a vein for that. So I think that's been sort of process number one was how we selected students. We've made some changes in the program, like I said, tutoring, as well as some of the events that we're doing. So along with the scholarship and the mentoring and support, we have monthly events for the students to attend. And some of those are just building some confidence. Some of them are social, some of them are outreach. And so kind of tweaking those to our students' needs has been interesting too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, in fact, I'm certain, and I think what you're doing, or I'm certain of what you're doing, is going to extend beyond improved retention, persistence, and even graduation rates. Again, it's, kind of early, but I think this is going to affect placement rates, and I think it's going to affect career progression, 5 and 10 years out as well. And
Sure.
and here's why I think that is that, just a few of the stats that Hillary and I collect. The general population placement rate for over the past 4 years and beyond actually has ranged between 96 and 98%. When we pull out students who did an internship from that, we've had 100% the previous 3 years, and then this most recent year was 99.6%. Students who are involved in at least one extracurricular activity, it can be a club, it can be a professional organization, it can be an athletic team, had a 99.1 to 99.4% placement rate depending on the year. So already there's a few things we're seeing that are resulting in higher placement rates. I think the leadership component, the socialization, the support network, I hope, once you start getting some graduates, let's stay in contact and let's do a placement rate for people who are involved in SD First. I'm certain it's going to be high.
Absolutely, yeah. And those are the things that we kind of took to build the program with, right? So to be in the program and to continue in the program and receive the scholarship, there's I'll say, for lack of a better word, a list of things that students must do. You have to come to every monthly get together. You have to participate in one extracurricular activity per semester and get it signed off on. So I don't care if that's rock climbing club or
Just
the
something,
Baja team or
right.
something, right? Could be any end of the spectrum. And then, of course, tutoring and all the academic advising too. But some of what Matt was just talking about, that being involved in extracurricular activities, we see as really important. And so it's been an interesting shift from the first cohort to say, well, this is a box I have to check, and I guess I better go to this meeting. And now they're starting to see the real benefits of that. And honestly, now we don't really even need that box because they're doing so many extracurricular activities already.
It's almost built into the fabric of what this program is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So we're sort of forcing them to do it right away, but now then once they see the benefits of it, they're just doing it on their own.
Yeah, that's really great because before we met, I was reading this article about how first gen are less likely, obviously without support, less likely to do extracurriculars because their parents don't or their guardians don't encourage it, or they're working 3 jobs and they don't have time to do it. But with those extracurriculars and that support and even the financial support, it can really help them kind of bolster those. So then when they go to look for jobs or internships or co-ops, they have something to kind of talk about their diverse experiences and how they've developed those leadership skills, they've developed those teamwork, those problem-solving skills. So I think that's really going to be helpful, especially when we go to look at placement.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And we have a number of our students as sophomores and even as our incoming cohort of freshmen that already have had or have an upcoming summer internship as freshmen and sophomores, which I think is a good testament to this group of students.
Oh, absolutely. Even as a freshman getting an internship, it's a big deal. Saying something.
You beat the odds already.
Yeah, right.
It's a big deal.
And I'm actually, I was already, impressed with SD First. Now that I'm learning more, I'm really impressed about more of it. But I like how you're taking continuous feedback and you're making adjustments to the program. So you started out with a vision, kind of modeled off of 2 other programs that work, and then you collect feedback from students and you implement that feedback to continually make it better, and you're not just stuck in, here's how we're doing it, we're going to stick to this, and you're kind of evolving it with the tutoring. And
yeah, we have to make changes all the time, or the program will become too stagnant. And so that's an interesting, we didn't talk about assessment yet, but there, in addition to the student feedback and that kind of assessment of the program, we actually have 2 other major pieces of assessment. And so one is an external assessment where we have a consultant come in once a year, and she surveys students and meets one-on-one with students and provides us the collective feedback from the students and make sure the program is going in the right direction and meeting all of our goals and to make changes if needed. So there's that external assessment piece where we have someone come in, and then there's an internal assessment piece, and that's really driven by Alicia, our program coordinator. And she administers an instrument called the EQI 2.0 to all of our students. And this is an instrument that measures emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence has really been shown to be very highly correlated to success of students.
Right.
So the higher your emotional intelligence, typically a little more successful students are. And this is a balance. There's lots of different categories. You have to think about balancing this. And Alicia would talk for hours on this. This is really right up her alley. And so looking at the emotional intelligence of students in different categories, we can start to see, hey, they might need an extra workshop in this area to kind of bolster that or provide support in these certain areas. And so that's another way that we can use some assessment as feedback for the program.
Do you guys do like a pre and post test for EQI? Okay.
Yep.
Wonderful.
So when they first start in the program and when they leave the program.
Awesome. So you can really see that
graduation.
changes in even a short amount of time.
We hope so. Yeah. We hope so.
Awesome.
Yeah, we got to do this again in a couple of years.
Yeah.
I know.
Give you all the real data. Right?
Yeah, this is all fascinating, and I'm always interested in how other people do assessment, just because I'm really stuck in a box of assessment should be placement. If they get jobs, we're working out, but obviously there's a lot more to it, and
There's a lot of
you
different
need,
ways.
yep. And even you mentioned starting out they had to check the box of just joining a student org, and then after they did it and they got a year into it, they're like, oh, there's value to this, and it's kind of that maturity and that growth as well. And
even joining other ones, like you kind of mentioned that more and more.
Yep.
And so let's talk a little bit more about the structure of SD First. So you went out, you got the grant.
Yep, the grant was written by me as well as 2 other faculty were on it, John Keller in the metallurgy department and Michael West, also in the metallurgy department. And they have had some background with culture and attitude and the Teoshpe program. So they were really helpful in that aspect. Molly Moore in admissions was also a key player in this because we have to recruit students to come into the program.
Right, yeah.
And Jesse Herrera, who is not with the university anymore, but he was really instrumental in providing the background for EQI, and we were lucky to have Alicia join the team to continue that EQI support.
Is John Killer just the grant master on
Yes.
this campus? I feel like if I hear a grant,
Puppet master.
yep, they're either getting John Killer to consult for them on the
Yeah.
grant on how to do it, or he's helping with it.
Oh yeah. Anytime I hear any of those professors' names, I'm like, oh, it's student support.
Yeah.
They always show up for
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll say that both John and I are first generation students also. And interestingly, he was my mentor when I was here as a first generation
Oh,
student.
wow,
And I
full
mentioned
circle.
I had these wonderful mentors, and that was a big one for me. So, yeah, it does continue full circle for sure.
I definitely feel like, as a first gen too, like I feel very kindred to them. Like I know serving at the institution, like I want to be a support for them that I felt like I didn't have at the time. So I feel like we got to stick together.
That's right. Yeah. And I think you want to not lose sight of the things that helped you along the way so that you can provide those, right? So
yeah, you're right.
I think that's important for faculty and staff to remember is you had help and support along the way. Don't forget what that was so that you can provide it for students that also need it.
And so you oversee SD First, is that right? Okay, and then you have Alicia Jensen.
Yeah, so Alicia's the program coordinator, and she really does the heavy lifting, I'll say. She's the one meeting with students on a regular basis and coordinating the monthly meetings and doing the assessment and all of that. So she's the one kind of running the show, I'll say.
And so then, long term, you talked about whether it's through CARA funding, some private donations, or it sounds like you might, or you're able to go back and dip your hand in the NSF pot again too, or
Potentially. Yeah.
Okay, so long term, do you see this folding in to a different department on campus, or is this something that's going to stay under you and ME? And
So it's not a mechanical engineering based
Okay.
program. It's not housed in any one department. The program accepts any science and engineering major. And so we do have some mechanical engineers, but we also have students from all other disciplines. And so really it kind of fits in the student support realm more than any department. This was just something that as faculty, there were a handful of us that could write the grant and get some funding. And so as you guys know, Alicia is physically over in the student success and student support area. And so I think that's really where this fits in terms of campus-wide. Because we have so many students on our campus that are first gen, it's not tied to one department or the other. And so I hope that this continues to include even more students and becomes sort of a campus-wide program.
Well, it definitely doesn't seem like it's going away in regards to the students coming into the institution needing those extra supports. So
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, with over 100 applicants, and you can only choose 25 because you're limited with funding.
We're
And
limited with our
that
scholarships.
sounds so hard to
It's-
pick.
Yeah, it's awful.
so you're
There's
thinking,
so many good applicants.
yeah,
Yeah.
And so then in the future, you're thinking, expand it beyond 25. Is that right?
Yeah. Provide this kind of support to
Yeah.
any and all first gen student that wants the support.
So like I said before, we were meeting here. I was reading an article, and it was like, I can't remember who it was written by. Anyways, it was talking about, because I really was trying to figure out like the career component, because Matt and I work in career services. I want to think about like how are some ways in which we can support these students. So just trying to get to know a little bit more about like what goes into their thoughts and the process of when they go out and get jobs. So when I was reading this article, these students didn't have like the support that our students have here, but it was talking about how first gen students typically accept offers faster than maybe the quote typical student. I don't know. Yeah, what do we call students that aren't first gens?
Non-first gen students.
Non-first gen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
There's a lot of terms for it, but non-first gen is
okay.
one term. Yeah.
So they accept offers sooner, and then I was also reading that they tend to kind of underestimate their skills. Like they might apply for jobs that don't necessarily require a bachelor's, and it was talking about how they might be more accustomed to settling, not settling, but settling for less. Like, what are some ways that our office or career services can go and support those students to show them and to tell them that, they also have the right to compete with the non-first gen students?
Yeah, I think two things here. In terms of how you support them, I think you just say that you're able to negotiate. Right?
Yeah, right.
I'll use my own. I didn't know you could negotiate for salary and benefits. I didn't know that was even an option. And so I think it's backing up against this, you don't know what you don't know. And so maybe even just telling them you're able to do this and here's how you might do it. And here's who you might contact if you needed help navigating that world, right? Your guys' office. So I think that's one way to support the students. The bigger issue really, and you kind of hit it right on the head, Hillary, is this idea of what's called imposter syndrome. And so maybe you've heard of imposter syndrome and maybe not. Imposter syndrome is the idea that someone has that maybe you're not as good as someone else, or you're only here because you are first gen or whatever your qualifier might be, right? And that pretty soon somebody's going to find out that you're not really that smart. And then your cover will be blown. And so you tend to downplay your own contributions and your own abilities. And so that's the idea of imposter syndrome. And lots of people have it. Lots of very high achieving people have it. And in fact, first gen students tend to have it a lot more than anybody else. And so that's something that we want to kind of shed light on with this group, is you are doing a really good job. Your contributions are enough. And you're here because you're smart, not because of any other qualifier.
Right.
And so shedding some light on that and just bringing awareness to it can be really powerful for students.
So for all the students at Mines campus, we exist. So career services exists. We're a free service, right? And we're here to help all students, no matter if they're first gen, non-first gen, whoever. So love to connect more with some first-gen students, and maybe we can even connect with them further through SD First. I remember last year I did a workshop for Alicia, and that seemed really helpful, and they had some really great questions that I didn't even think about till they asked. So,
and that was very fruitful. We did that right before the career fair in
yes.
the fall, and
I remember seeing some there.
Several of our students got offers after that for summer employment. So,
absolutely,
that was good news.
Cool.
Yeah, it'll be great if there's a way to implement, I'll say requirement to, when you get an offer, you have to come see us.
Yeah, that'd be a great idea.
We did that with the VRC for a while with the Vets Club. It was if you had an offer, you had to go to Career Services with that offer. It's kind of fizzled out, but that's something I wish we could do more, because you're absolutely right, Cassandra. A lot of students don't know they can negotiate, and I'd say, just like you two said, it probably is higher amongst first gen students, because they don't students get a lot of advice from their parents, and their parents might not even know that you can negotiate offers, because the type of offers that you get after a 4-year education are usually negotiable. Certainly not all are, but
and from my experience, I remember I was just happy to get paid, so I was like, of course I'm going to accept this offer. Whereas our department, we can say, okay, well, let's look at our averages. Let's do some research on this specific job, location. Let's see if this really makes sense for you.
And not only are they just not able to get paid, they're getting paid a good salary. There's a lot of when companies do this, their goal is to get students not to negotiate. It's just business. It's not personal.
Right.
And so they're trying to give a juicy enough offer out there, and it is a good offer. But when you're looking at another $3-4 grand or even $1,000 over the course of a lifetime, and then you factor in the raises they get, a percentage of that, it's a difference.
And the benefits too.
Yep, the benefits.
I didn't even realize that benefits were such an added component to more than your salary. And I think we talk with students a lot about that now, is your salary is great, but what are how much is coming out of your paycheck that you have to cover, right?
Those benefits can really bolster your salary a lot.
And even back to the benefits, I'd say of students, when I start going through a benefits package with them and I explain them, and I kind of they let me know, I know this stuff. I'll usually ask them, how do you know this? And they'll say, I went through this with a parent.
Yep, I hear that a lot too.
Yeah, and but the ones who don't understand, all the nuances of insurance and disability and life insurance, usually it's because they didn't talk to a parent about it, or their parent just didn't know that stuff.
Yeah, it's murky water to navigate, no matter who you are, and so it's worth talking to people that do it day in and day out, like you guys, and I think the big key is to ask students to know their worth, right? Whether you're first gen or not, and maybe this is a bigger issue for first gen students, but knowing your worth and not accepting that offer right away, and taking the time to think about negotiating those pieces.
Yeah. And knowing that, like Matt was saying, it's business, right? So I know, when I went into looking for a career, I didn't know you can negotiate, but then I was also afraid, okay, if I negotiate, are they going to be nope, you don't have this job, right? And I think that could be a fear that many maybe have that they're not talking about.
I think that's imposter syndrome,
right?
At its heart,
exactly, right?
Yeah, they're going to find out, and I won't get the job in the end. Yeah, Yep.
What do you wish that these first gen students knew when they came to Mines?
I think it's the same wish for all students, but I wish that they knew that it was okay to ask for help before it's too late. The number of times we see students and they're like, I'm going to drop this course because it's too late, and I'll say, did you talk to your professor? Well, no. That's step one, right? Use your resources, professors, and all the facilities on campus that are here to help you. But you have to ask for that help before it gets to a point of, I have to drop this class or I'm not going to get a good grade. And so reaching out and asking for help it's scary and intimidating, and we know it is, but I wish that they knew that it was okay, and that's quite literally everyone on this campus. That's our job, is to help students. And that's why we're here, and we want to help. And so I wish that they would reach out for help. more often and sooner.
Mm-hmm. And I think that could be really once they develop that habit, be a great strength of first-gen students of, you know, asking those questions early on, because really this will go with them throughout their entire life. Even when they graduate, they go into a career, they have to also be willing, humble, and open to be able to ask questions or say, you don't know what you don't know, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's okay to not know.
Right.
Yeah. But
Absolutely.
figuring it out together is the only way to figure it out. So, yeah, you're absolutely right.
And if we have any alums or anybody that wants to, you know, help with SD First, who do they contact?
They can contact me. So if you search First Generation on the School of Mines website, you will go to our SD First webpage. You can reach out to me. Phone or email is just fine, and I'm happy to connect with any, like you said, alum or community members that want to help in any way. We're looking for, you know, mentors for students in the community would be great. Folks to come in and share their experiences with students and encourage our students in any way possible. Tours of local facilities is also useful. So it can be a number of different ways that you're helping and connecting. And so we're happy to take any and all help that we can.
Awesome.
And I guess just another thought I had, I think employers are going to like this program, not just because people are passionate about it, and there's a lot of people who are first-gen students that want to see other first-gen students succeed, but also from the standpoint of that, not only if they were to get a student from this SD First program, not only are they getting a smart student, which everybody here is, but now they're getting a student with more professional skills because they have the support network. They're required to be in extracurricular activities. They're required to get tutoring. They're building these professional skills that not all students are building.
Right.
I hope SD First students are putting this on their resume.
I hope so too.
Yeah, SD First, and then a bullet of just what SD First is. Because they don't need to know what SD First is, but a bullet saying a professional development program, requiring X, Y, and Z. Now that means something.
Sure. Yeah. It's also a good talking point, I would imagine, in an interview, right? You've got to have things that you can share about yourself and things that you've done, and so these kind of leadership skills are important to come across in an interview. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Cassandra.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for your time and
appreciate it.
Telling us about it.
Yeah. We're really super passionate about this program, and hopefully we can get more folks on board to support in any way possible and join in the cause and help support students.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. And we're always happy to plug different programs that are happening at the university level that are here to support our students. So
sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, thanks a lot. That was really good. This is